Happy 2023. I'd like to take a little bit of time to give some facilities history for Village Tech Schools. I did major in history at the University of Arkansas, so maybe those skills will have a chance to come out talking about our facility history. So for those of you that may or may not know the full VT story, don't worry, I won't give all of it. But just to go back to the beginning, as this is our 10th year in school. We opened our doors in 2013, so we're in our 10th year of school, which is an awesome celebration to be having. We were one of 4 schools to receive unanimous approval from the State Board of Education in 2012. Now, this was November of 2012, and we had 9 months to launch and open our school in September of 2013. So fast forward to May of 2013, and we are still working on signing our lease agreement. For those of you that have been here since day one, you may remember our 45-day miracle build to get us opened by September 2nd with our 640 pre-K through 8th grade students. So it didn't take long for that site to be small. And we ultimately expanded to the Cedar Hill Church of Christ on Clark Road, where they had some space for us to open up our early childhood center. We had a pre-K2 early childhood center there. And then we also did some leasehold improvements to create our Forge space in that original Cedar Hill campus. We purchased some property in Cedar Hill, 14.2 acres, that we were ultimately going to develop. As we learned more about the property and was working with the city, that became increasingly challenging. And then in 2017, had an opportunity to purchase this property here in Duncanville. The Duncanville Church of Christ was located here, and they were looking to sell a portion and then ultimately all of their property that we have today. So we purchased the 28 acres and then renovated the campus, the church building to turn into our campus. We did that as an 8th through 12th grade space because with the type of construction, it was a tilt wall construction. There weren't enough options to recreating the basic layout that it really wouldn't have functioned well for pre-K2. You know, your youngest students can't have a second floor that they're housed in. So then we finished phase 1. We got our portables on site and we started operating. We were really excited not too long after that to be selected by Equitable Facilities Fund to be one of their first investments for our phase 2, where we built our black box, our front courtyard, as well as our gym space, which is also a story about a storm shelter. If you don't know this, our gym is an F5 rated storm shelter. So when we get those weather alerts, this is the safest place for your child to be. So this second phase that we were able to do with Equitable Facilities Fund was really an incredible opportunity for Village Tech because we were able to save money on our interest rate, and then we were also able to save some money on what's called the Debt Reserve Fund. So all of that has brought us to today. And so we'll get into where do we find ourselves with phase 3? What does it look like as we go through? And then if we have a little bit of time, we'll use the chat to at least get some questions. We may not answer those questions today, but at least get some questions surfaced, and then we can follow up with some answer to those questions. So what are we going to talk about with phase 3 today? So first portion of this is taking a sneak peek into the future. We've been working with WRA Architects and Lee Lewis Construction, and we have some beautiful renderings that show what this phase looks like. The second piece I want to talk about is how eggs aren't the only expensive products out there. So we're going to look at the preliminary costs and scope of this project. And then finally, Village Tech needs you as we talk about our phase 3 next steps. So first, a big question. When we started this process, as I mentioned, phase 1 and phase 2, all of that was financed with bond debt. Again, just a little bit of education here on kind of how we work and how our finances work. As a public charter school, we are a full public school. We're funded through the state. We're held accountable through STAR and end of course. We're held accountable through our finances. But what we don't do, like an independent school district, is we don't have taxing authority. So there's no opportunity for us to raise additional funds through property taxes in order to fund our facilities. So all of our facilities that we purchase comes out of our general operating budget. And as a public charter school, we receive about $2,000 less per student per year for our operations. So as you can imagine, facilities financing is a real challenge for public charter schools. Most of the ones that you see throughout North Texas were very rapid growth charters, right? They expanded with a lot of sites and a lot of students, and that's just not what we're looking to do at Village Tech. So when we got to this point where we were looking at how can we build a phase 3, if you recall, not too long ago, interest rates were fantastic. It was this wonderful little blip as we were turning the corner on the pandemic, where people were refinancing their homes. I think I missed the window. Hopefully you didn't miss it for you. And we were talking with our financial advisor about refinancing our debt, which would have freed up significant funds year over year, which would have given us an opportunity to finance even more additional debt to get us to a permanent space for one final phase. It did not take long in that conversation to find out that the conditions were changing rapidly. The cost of construction and the cost of borrowing money, interest rates, was increasing, and it started to accelerate pretty quickly. So within a few months of having started this conversation, the landscape had completely shifted. And we recognized that we would have to go from one big final phase to a two-step approach to this. And when that happened, our big question was this: how might we maximize the benefit for our entire campus community by enhancing the student, staff, and family experience of our facilities? So that question has been at the forefront as we look at phase 3 and as we operate within these constraints. When we started down this path, we were talking about potentially financing as much as a $20 million project. At this point, we are looking at financing an $8 million project. So that's a significant difference, and we'll talk about how that has impacted our scope and what we're looking at. So before we get into the scope piece, though, let's talk about the need, and let's talk about these renderings and where we find ourselves. So some things that I know we're all too familiar with at Village Tech, some of our current challenges. One is obviously safety and security and providing for a secure campus with our portable buildings. This has been a point of emphasis from our governor, from the legislature, and from TEA. And there's new rules that are actually coming out this year that are going to impact schools across the entire state on what upgrades need to happen. And so we'll talk about what upgrade we're going to be able to provide to meet those requirements and make some of this openness a little less open to outside intruders or visitors. Additionally, with our portable buildings, as much as everybody loves a beautiful day like today, where we have sunshine and 80-degree weather, which is odd for February, there are days when it's windy, rainy, and cold, and we want to be able to do something about that. So it's uncovered and open on rainy days. Additionally, we have one PE space and one cafeteria space, and that puts restrictions on our instructional schedule. Not only that, the cafeteria space is loud for about 3 hours during the day, which is impactful to our juniors, seniors, and 8th grade students. And so that's another thing that we surfaced as we're looking at needs. And then for those of you that don't have 4-wheel drive, there are times throughout the year where the gravel starts to deteriorate, whether it's from rain or people driving over it, and we have to refill and resurface with gravel. That driveway needs to be paved. So what are some other needs as we get to see a few of these renderings in this slide? Talked about the cafeteria size restricting our schedule and the opportunity to have fewer lunch periods in a single space. The other piece to this is this creates a dedicated elementary event space. So what are we looking to do, and what do we have in terms of pictures to show that? The biggest portion of this build is what's on this slide, and that's this cafetorium. It is a dedicated pre-K5 cafeteria space with an additional small gym space that can be used for things like strength training, yoga, Pilates, dance, those types of cheer, those types of activities would be perfect in this space. Or it can open up and make for a larger event space for evening assemblies or things like math night. Other things that we host on our campus can be housed here. Not only that, if you've attended a Village Tech sporting event, volleyball or basketball, then you know that if you need someone to use the restroom, you have to leave the gym space and go by our theater. That wasn't the best of designs for visitors, but it also wasn't intended to be our entire gym space. And that was an expensive build with it being a storm shelter. This cafeteria space, if you go through that large door in the center of the upper right picture, then you can see bathrooms are in that space as well. And I'll show another shot that will show that a little bit better. Additionally, you have this great outdoor area that starts to enclose the courtyard as well. So that's the primary function of this phase. Additional things that we're able to do is provide some awnings and coverings, and then also to pave our gravel road, to pave Saw Road. And so those are the three primary elements. And then, of course, the safety and security upgrades, which we'll look at as well. That's what we're looking at for phase 3. So a few more photos and renderings to get a sense of what this is. So you can see this is looking into the courtyard from the opposing side. This will house, again, pre-K through 5th grade lunches throughout the day, and then can be used for other purposes in the mornings or afternoons or evenings. And then this is the small multi-purpose gym space that looks out into the courtyard as well. And then this is that entry that I was talking about. This will connect the gym to this cafeteria and provide additional restroom access for the gym, which will be a much needed benefit as well. And this is a brand new rendering. I just got this week. We've been working again pretty diligently with WRA to get to the final drawings, the 100% construction documents. And you'll see some things that I want to point out. So this is standing in our east parking lot, essentially towards the creek. And you can see the covered awning for drop-off and pickup here. So we'll be able to utilize this as a drop-off and pickup space for our younger grades. It'll be a place where they can stage and enter in here, which will improve our driveline traffic, drop-off and pickup procedures for all of our campus. As you know, we're a 1,300 student pre-K-12. And so getting all of those students dropped off and picked up in a safe, happy, and effective way is important to us each and every day. If you'll also notice to the right of the building, there's a sidewalk there and then some fencing that will start to enclose this portion of the campus. And I'll share more on that when we have a bird's eye view. And then this view is from the courtyard. And so what happens here is that that driveway that currently exists will disappear. And you now have an expanded courtyard space with additional turf for students to sit on for outdoor events, creating this really nice interior space. And then also outdoor seating. And I love the purple tables. I'm a sucker for our colors, obviously, and those tables are just fantastic. So that will be additional seating for lunch as well. Or, oftentimes you'll see classes come out here and work. Sometimes even PE will have some PE activities in this space. And this will be a great addition for this portion of our campus. So let's look at the current phase 3 steps. So you'll notice here off of Cedar Hill Road and Daniel Dale in the corner, you see a track and field. We did design the track and field to prepare for our final master plan. But at this point in the scope, we're not going to be building the track and field with this portion of the scope. For those of you that have been in this journey with us from the beginning, you know that this was a piece of this that we were really hopeful to make happen. Again, as we look at the cost of construction and the cost of borrowing money, it's just put further constraints on some of these plans and goals. So it's designed, it's ready, but it is not yet in play. And so some things will happen when that does get built. But in the meantime, if you look at what's the south or bottom portion of this, you see this is Saw Road. This will be paved. And then additionally, this shows more than the scope will ultimately hold, but some additional awnings that will take place to have some additional rain protection for our pre-K through 2 students in particular. And then you'll see here, this is where that pre-K-5 cafeteria is that starts to enclose this courtyard. I'll show you the master floor plan next, and you'll see how this eventually will come together to create this nice interior courtyard. And so what about the safety and security upgrades that I talked about? If you'll notice, we've put on Daniel Dale, we upgraded the fence that was previously there, and then all the way along the western edge on Cedar Hill Road. You may have seen the gate that has been installed here. We are still working to get that finalized, and then also want to give parents a little bit of time to get used to it, because there will be times throughout the day where it will be closed. And it's important to note that we cannot have cars queued and stacked on Cedar Hill Road to park. So for those parents that like to show up early to pick up, that early time is ultimately going to change so that it coincides with when the gate is open. But this fence then goes to the southwest edge of our property, and along the bottom of the picture, along the southern edge, the fence will extend all the way east of the portables, east of Saw Road, east of the parking lot, around the dumpsters here, and then come over to the drive. There will be an automatic gate here, and then additional fencing here to create that restricted access and entry to this. So while our students still get full reign of our campus and our teachers get full reign of our campus, we start to be able to limit access from outside visitors and really direct them to our main tower entrance exclusively. I think that's a big upgrade and benefit for us. So that's what the current phase looks like. And then if we go to the master floor plan, I just want to point out kind of where we're headed, and also help explain a little bit as to why an option that I know we all want to see happen is not quite in place yet. So this purple box represents the cafeteria and multi-purpose gym space, which is the project we're adding now. This upper left corner that's boxed in red is one floor of two that is a part of the master floor plan. And then this other red box is a second portion of the master floor plan that also has 2 stories. So what this will ultimately do is provide permanent classroom space for all of our grade levels. It will also provide the needed administrative space, and then space for our students with special needs. All of this takes place with this phase. So you may be wondering, well, why not tackle a portion of this phase as opposed to take this smaller bite? And the bottom line is cost. At this point, to finance and to build this smaller portion here, for example, would cost anywhere between $14 and $16 million. And that's over budget by $6 to $8 million. It almost doubles what we're able to do at this time. So our goal and approach is to take a step now, and then to prepare ourselves to take a step in the future. I don't know the timeline on that. There's a number of factors that are well outside of our control. One factor that's outside of our control is how long will interest rates stay at their current rate? Because right now they're higher than our original borrowing of money. The second one is the cost of construction. What everyone says is it never goes down. And right now, construction for school facilities is anywhere between $400 and $450 a foot. If your jaw didn't drop, then you have not heard school construction prices before. Previous construction prices, just a couple of years ago, you were paying $250 a foot for school construction. So it's just astronomical right now for building projects. The other thing we don't know about is what's going to happen with state funding. The legislature is in session, and there's a lot of talk around increasing the basic allotment for public schools. There's a lot of talk around increasing teacher compensation. But if you're watching the news, there's also a lot of conversation around vouchers. And the voucher programs are essentially about funneling public dollars to private schools. And just as a reminder, I said this at the beginning, but I'll say it again, we are a public school as a public charter school. We do not benefit from a voucher program. What happens in that case is public dollars will get diverted and go into private hands. So for us and for our independent school district friends, that could be a negative impact on public school funding. It's too early to tell. We don't yet know. Another piece to this is we don't know what's possible with philanthropy. We've worked at development and fundraising and been in front of foundations before. But charter school fundraising is quite challenging these days. The Wild West of 20 years ago, where there was more funding from private donors and foundations, it's not the same landscape as it is today. So while it's certainly possible, it's not something we can really count on at this point in our plans. So just to give you kind of a heads up as to where we find ourselves in the current landscape and what might be possible. I don't know the timeline on this, but we do have the master plan designed, and we know what we're working towards and what we're trying to accomplish with that. So I've already talked a little bit about this, but eggs aren't the only expensive product right now. And, this seemed like a fitting Valentine's Day meme: impress her with something expensive, a dozen eggs. Let's talk about where we find ourselves with the costs. So at 90% drawings, which means almost complete, our current construction cost is just over $8 million. That doesn't include the track and field. It also doesn't include 20% soft costs. Our total budget is $8.2 million. And you may be going, wait, I thought you said it was $8 million. Well, we have an additional $200,000 from the state of Texas for a safety allotment as part of the recent initiatives to improve school facility safety across the state. So at $8.2 million, how does this break out for all of us? The cafeteria multipurpose gym is currently coming in at $5.8 million. The athletic field is at $4.4 million. And to pave Saw Road is at $159,000. And then the canopies, awnings, and fencing are at $1.78 million. And then the fencing pulled out of that 1.78 is currently priced at $141,000, not including gates. Obviously, all of these are estimates based on the drawings, and those could, be slightly higher or slightly lower, depending on how the process goes and how the process is managed. So when we started this, the initial estimates from our architecture team were lower than this. We were pricing out an athletic field at about half that cost was our anticipation for it, and the cafetorium closer to $4 million than $5.8 million. And what we've all seen in the last several months is the cost of construction, again, is just exceptionally high. So I just want to be completely straightforward with where we find ourselves with the challenges and what's made this kind of a challenging and lengthier process than even we thought it would be when we started this. But that's kind of the way projects go, and particularly construction projects. But we do find ourselves at a really unique time in history when it comes to these types of things. So that's how it breaks out and what we're finding here. The last piece of this is that Village Tech needs you. So what's happening next with our phase 3? We'll finalize the scope and the estimates based on the 100% construction documents. Those things are happening here before spring break. We held a community meeting on February 20th. We're also going to invite the community out on April 1st. That's Mosaic, our exhibition, and we'll have 1 or 2 sessions devoted to talking about our phase 3. We have to go through a special use permit amendment with the city of Duncanville. That has 2 steps to it. The first step is March 13th with planning and zoning. The second step is April 4th with city council. And where we could use Village Tech community to come out is to come out and do a purple out at the city council meeting for people to show up and speak to why this school is important to them and show why this next step is important for our school community as well. As you may imagine, one of the things I hear frequently from the city that the city hears from our neighbors are concerns about traffic. Now, obviously, every school in Texas, and especially in a suburban area like ours or an urban area, is going to have traffic. And we don't have a bus service because we take in students from a large array of cities and districts. And so we bring 1,300 students on and off our site every day that we're in session. And I think our parents do a phenomenal job following our drive-line procedures to make it safe and effective. Our staff works hard to do that as well. And so sometimes this becomes a concern for our neighbors and they reach out to the city. Well, we want the story to be about something different than our traffic. We know that our students are doing incredible things every day. They're working in the Fords, they're designing, making, creating, presenting work of depth and quality. And we want that to be what we're talking about. Additionally, this phase 3 is a positive thing for our driveline. Once finished, we'll be able to use that space to help change our driveline structure just a little bit and make drop off and pick up just a little bit easier and a little bit faster as it goes through there. And then once that's finished, we'll break ground. I don't have the full timeline laid out at this point, but the current estimate is that it'll take 12 months for the total project. And I anticipate that we'll be prioritizing getting Saw Road paved before the start of the school year, as well as some of the awnings and some of the smaller work, perhaps the fencing and the gates. What we don't know is if every school in Texas is required to add gates or fences or other security upgrades. We don't know what that's going to do to supply and demand, and therefore the price. So pricing could adjust on us. The other piece is we could have back orders. That's another thing we've seen in construction that our friends at Lee Lewis have talked to us about. Is they give us a realistic timeline to account for that, but there are things that are still impacted in the supply chain that make some of these pieces outside of our control as to when they might happen. We don't know if that's going to happen with fencing. We may find out that fencing supplies in Texas all of a sudden have run out or are double in price once this happens. We're not sure. We'll see how that plays out for us. But that's the basic timelines we're looking at, about 12 months. If we're ahead of that timeline, we will open the space and start using it next school year. If we're right on time, then it'll be open and ready for the fall of 2025. So next year we'll be under construction and then we'll get going. So we've got a few more steps here to take, finalizing our financing being one of them, getting through this amendment process with the city of Duncanville, and then also breaking ground so that we can get this construction going. So there's still some challenges ahead, but hats off to the teams that have been working on this to make this happen, and for all of the input and feedback that has been given along the way. So we are right at 6:27. I'd like to take a couple minutes. If you would, please use the chat and go ahead and add some questions. We'll read the questions and then get answers back on those over time. So I'll get the chat open on my end. And then if you have questions, please use that. And as you're writing questions, I just want to say thank you again for being able to join for this virtual meeting. This we thought was the best way to get this information out so that we could have your evening and your schedule to work. Additionally, while you're thinking of questions, I just want to remind everybody of a few things we've been talking about on our weekly update. One, thank you, Amanda. Don't forget about March 3rd and April 3rd. Those were not days we were in school. They were our inclement weather days, but we had 3 days where we were iced out. And so we will be in school those days. It's really critical that we have attendance on those days because those days cannot be waived. So please mark those on your calendar to be sure that we have high attendance on those days. We need your students here. The other things that are coming up, we got spring break just around the corner. And then not too long after spring break is Mosaic. This is on April 1st. It is our annual exhibition of learning. It is a Saturday, and it's a Saturday because it's so important for our community to be able to come out and see what our students are up to. This is our Super Bowl. This is the first part of performance season where all the things that they've been doing all year are on display. So students are going to take something that matters to them, and they're going to present to a community audience. This is something for you to attend. Bring family, bring friends on April 1st. And then after April 1st, we enter into the second half of performance season, which is state testing. So we have STAR and end of course, and we want your students to show what they know and do their absolute best on those tests. It is how we are evaluated as a school at the state level, and we want to ensure that we give our best efforts and for students to take pride in their work on those days as well. Okay, we got a few questions coming in. So one is, where will the recorded meeting be at? And the answer is it'll be shared via YouTube and sent via Skyward newsletter, etc. And then text the makeup days and mosaic days in chat. So Sierra got that in there. So the makeup days are March 3rd and April 3rd. Sierra, if you could also put in mosaic. And then Rosemary, good to see you, Rosemary. What is the plan for pickup when we are under construction during the school year? So we'll have to work with our construction team, but essentially it will remain similar to what it is today. It's not going to have too many significant changes. There may be some small tweaks as we make tweaks each year, but it will essentially be the same as it is today. We'll have to work with the construction team for them to understand what our needs are and what is not eligible for them to block off. And then they'll have to, also us meet their needs so that they can have space. The biggest thing is obviously losing that center drive at some point. And so we'll have to make use of that cross drive that's going to be added. So we'll get those plans communicated once they're finalized. And then Ignacio Cruz, will you guys be sending the dates to remind us about the city council meeting, watching the meeting on my phone? Well, that's a great use of the phone there, sir. And yes, we'll get those out. And then how do you see your students' absences? Great question. You can log into your Skyward. And if you are not sure how to log into your student's Skyward, then reach out to one of our student service coordinators. Depending on the grade level, it's going to be either Miss Piedra, Miss Palos, or Miss Perry, the 3 Ps of Village Tech, and go ahead and they can show you how to do that. Mr. Price, love the changes in the thought process around it. Thank you. Any thoughts about additional parking? Well, thank you, sir. And yes, so this first step is not going to bring additional parking. When we remove the portables and finalize this property, then what we'll be able to do is turn that entire section into a parking lot, and we'll add a significant number of spots at that point. There may be some thoughts on adding some along the current Southern Drive, but with our current cost constraints, it may not be something we can put in play right now. But we're still in a little bit of a parking pinch until we do that. Let's see. Katrina Achebe, could we get some students to the city council meeting to speak on their experiences with VT? We will follow up on that. I think that's a great idea. Want to make sure we know what to expect at the council meeting and what we need to do to have a good showing. Thank you, Sierra, for posting the student services coordinators. And then a question, how many classrooms per section? So we have currently in grades K through 7, there are 5 classrooms per grade level. 8th grade has 4. And then 9th through 12th is a little harder to define because we pair courses, but more or less you're looking at 4 classes per grade level. It really translates into more credits than that because, but how we pair it, it's anywhere from 4 to 6 classes in the high school. All right, everybody, great questions. If you've got additional questions, please email this communications@villagetechschools.org. It is a monitored email address, and we will be sure to collect those. And then this will be posted as well. Again, thank you for attending tonight. Thank you for being VT. Thank you for your students being here each day and doing awesome work. I'm excited about how this year will continue to unfold. On a personal note, I've got a senior myself, and so graduating one, and they're on their way out of the house, off to college. And so this is a big year in a lot of ways, and very excited for the work that our kids are doing here and our teachers as well. So thank you all. Have a great night.